this first Sunday of Lent, our gospel reading wastes no time in getting right to the heart of the matter. Lent is a time set apart for prayer when we focus on our need for the repentance of sins. Repentance for those times when temptation got the best of us, when we didn't act as God would have us act or as our grandparents taught us. You know, those times. Those times when, as the 1970s comedian Flip Wilson used to say, the devil made me do it. The devil made me buy that dress. I didn't buy it. He literally pushed me through that window through that store door when I was window shopping. The devil made me do it. I didn't buy that new set of golf clubs I didn't even need. I would never do such a thing. The devil made me do it. Whether it's dresses or golf clubs, or eating an extra piece of cake, or not exercising for several weeks in a row, we've all got our version of the devil made me do it. In our reading today, Jesus has just been baptized in the River Jordan. He has heard the sacred words, "You are my Son, the Beloved." He steps out of the water, still wet, glistening in the sun, marveling at this life-changing experience, when suddenly there is a blinding shift from light to dark, from exultation to despair, from hearing that he is God's very own Son to being led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, where darkness and confusion reign. Significantly, Jesus does not go into the wilderness on his own, but is led by the Spirit of God to where the devil awaits him. How unfair this seems. Jesus has just been baptized, marked as Christ's own forever. Let him enjoy it. Let him revel in the exultation of the newness. Let the light shine on him today, tomorrow, and for the rest of time, for he is God's beloved. Isn't that a guarantee of something? Shouldn't that be a safeguard from being driven out into the wilderness where Satan awaits and wild beasts roam? We'd like to think so. For somewhere in our heart of hearts, we believe that this really is our due. We believe that somewhere someone else has just such a deal, such a life free from the wilderness of self-doubt, temptation, wild beasts within and without, the wild beast of the untimely death of a loved one, the wild beasts of chronic illness, addiction, emotional burdens, estrangement, despair. So we resist the wilderness. Who wouldn't? We cling to the belief that God will somehow protect us and those we love. Then, when despite all our efforts to avoid the wilderness, we find ourselves and our loved ones plunged right into the middle of it, we say, wait a minute. There's something wrong with this picture. We shouldn't be here. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. What our gospel reading this morning is telling us is, yes, you and your loved ones and friends, yes, Jesus and his friends and his disciples, even them. For no one escapes the wilderness. For some, the wilderness is most assuredly ever present and very harsh, like the people here in Palm Beach County who live with food insecurity day in and day out, our sisters and brothers who live with the realities that racism can bring, and those in developing nations like my Cameroonian sisters and brothers who live on $1 a day. I pray that on this first Sunday in Lent, as we begin our walk into the wilderness, we will find ourselves relating on a deeper level to someone whose wilderness may be very different than our own, whether inside or outside the church. But before we can reach out to someone else, we need to deal with our own wilderness experiences, particularly what I call the wild beasts within. For it's only when we deal with those that we're able to effectively deal with the wild beasts that are outside us and around us every day. One of my grandson's favorite bedtime stories is Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. His mother used to love it too. It's a story of a little boy named Max who gets himself into all sorts of mischief and is finally sent to his room without any supper. That very night in Max's room, a forest grows and grows until there are vines hanging from the ceiling and there are trees all around him. Suddenly, Max is in the wilderness, and it looks like a frightening place, a place where no one would ever want to be. What does Max do? He stays there, right in the middle of it. Then the wild things come, the wild beasts, and they look positively awful. They've got horns and tusks and claws and big teeth. Some have mangy hair, some even have striped bodies. All of them look like something you'd rather ignore and avoid at all costs. But Max does not ignore them. Little bitty Max looks them right in the eye and says, "Be still." And the wild beasts are still. Then Max looks at them again and says, "Let the wild rumpus start." And the wild rumpus starts. The beasts start dancing around, and Max is right in the middle of them, dancing for all he is worth. They bray at the moon, he brays at the moon. They turn around with their arms up in the air, and Max follows suit. They swing from trees, Max swings with them. Then he even gets on the back of one of the beasts and rides around. Finally, the beasts grow weary and fall asleep, and Max, comfortable and content, falls asleep with them. When they awaken, Max decides it's time to go. The beasts grab onto him. They do not want him to leave, but Max stands firm and says goodbye to the beasts. Suddenly he finds himself back in his room where a hot plate of food is waiting for him. The wilderness recedes, and he's on familiar ground, beloved and wiser for his adventure with the wild things. The wilderness, filled with wild beasts. It was there for Max. It was there for Jesus. It's there for our brothers and sisters near and far. It's there for you and for me. What can we do when we find ourselves cast out from the known into the unknown, surrounded by difficulties and temptations we'd rather ignore? First, we can walk right into the middle of them and accept them, even dance with them or swing from trees with them like Max. For when we can accept our own wild beasts within, we can begin to calm them, and in the process, calm ourselves. We can begin to claim them, and in the process, reclaim ourselves. For you see, the only way out is through. When we're in the middle of a painful situation, and let's face it, at some point, all of us are. If we ignore it, try to stuff it down or walk around it, guess what? It stays firmly fixed right where it is. But if we face it head on and walk right through it like Max, Eventually, we leave it behind where it belongs. Second, we can remember that we are not the first to find ourselves in the wilderness. Jesus has been there before us. He knows firsthand our fears, our confusion and despair. He knows firsthand what it means to be cast out and to wonder if we will ever return. He knows our soul's deepest longing and our heart's most pressing need. Finally, we can let the angels minister to us just as they did to Jesus. We can let others within the Christian community care for us, reach out to us, and give us a steady hand. And then, significantly, we can be that steady hand for others in the world who need us to reach out to them with love, tangible support, and prayers. Baptism and wilderness, light and dark, exultation and despair, all part of the rhythm of life, a rhythm for us to move with, dance with, embrace, and make our own. Will you reach out to someone in the wilderness this Lent? Will you let someone reach out to you?